Hey there, we're the Westlaw Pirates and welcome to the show. We're here to share our thoughts on Northwestern athletics and college sports with thoughts and analysis from the visceral to the statistical. We run our tailgate with the red pirate flag flying high above as we give no quarter, especially the fourth. I'm Sam Walter.
I'm John Lacombe.
And I'm Eric Scoscaspo.
Tonight we wrap up our previews of the Northwestern teams on Northwestern's schedule. Next week we'll be back with our Northwestern preview. I mean, we've talked about this team quite a bit, but we're going to go in depth.
I feel like year to year, this is the week when things really get, I don't know, like they really ramp up, because this is like where we're like, oh, here we are, we're at the end of the schedule now, and next comes the preview. Like all of a sudden, the things really start to hammer.
Yeah, we're like next weekend, not this upcoming weekend, but the next weekend is week 0.
That's crazy. It's amazing.
Which is cool. I mean, week 0 is kind of a dud this year, right? There's nothing like super exciting for week 0. I haven't looked at it, but I know there's nothing screaming out. I mean, I guess there's that game in Ireland. Who's playing in that?
I was gonna say last year. Yeah, what was it, Scuzz?
No, I'm wrong. I was thinking Colorado, Georgia Tech, but that's not week 0.
No, that's week 1.
I loved last year. It was Ireland. It was Kansas State and Iowa State in the rain in Ireland. Like, all right, you sickos, here you go. How bad do you want it?
North Carolina, TCU. You get to watch Bill Belichick go coach another continent.
And as we were talking about on Twitter today, you get to watch starting North Carolina Tar Heels starting quarterback Billy Edwards Jr., who was this is the crazy. Billy Edwards Jr. started against a Pat Fitzgerald coached Northwestern Wildcats team. That's how long Billy Edwards Jr. has been playing college football. He's the latest guy where you're like, that guy's still playing football. Yep. He's North Carolina Tar Heels. Which that can only work out perfect. Nothing but great news out of that place.
Oh, for sure. But so that's next weekend. Like I say, tonight we've got the back quarter of our schedule. Ohio State, Minnesota, Illinois. That's quite an end to our schedule, and coming off the Oregon game and going right into that, and Oregon, Iowa, Ohio State. That's a bit
it's like Ohio State is Ohio State, but this is every year. I mean, this is another one. We know that Minnesota and that Illinois game are going to be everything. Like that's the way that it breaks. Like each of these past couple of years, everything's going to hinge on those two games.
So, as we're going to be heading to Columbus. We get the number 1 ranked, I guess, because AP rankings and coaches polls are out way too early. I mean, for whatever that's worth, sure. Ohio State is number 1 coming in. Will they be number 1 when we see them? Who knows? Doesn't matter. Not really. They're still a damn good team. And John, why don't you run us through their defense?
Yeah, this is one of those ones where it's like, do we have a super hard schedule? Of course we do. But you're rearranging the deck chairs. The difference between us being like the 25th hardest schedule and like the 6th or 5th, which is what we actually are. What if Ohio State was ranked 10th? Like, does that really affect us much one way or the other? Like, however these things are done, it's like we're going to the number 1 team in the country. Like, I mean, this is one of those ones. I feel free and easy previewing this one because I'm like, no, this is factored into no one's plans. But yeah, this defense, we've come all this way. And we've talked about, I mean, we're the preeminent defensive conference in the nation. Last year was a banner year for it. We've talked about all of these unreal defenses, and somehow we haven't gotten to the best of them all. And here they are. This was all of college football's defensive god last year. This team had the best defensive player, maybe the best overall player in college football, in Caleb Downs. It led the nation in total defense, scoring defense, passing defense, and just throw in the number 2 run defense in the Big Ten as well. 7 of the 11 starters on this defense were drafted, including 3 guys in the top 10 picks. So, yeah, this was a pretty good defense. But honestly, you really do have to tip your pencil tucked cap to Matt Patricia, because a lot of people, including us, were kind of skeptical of that hire based on Patricia's recent NFL bona fides. I mean, it made sense that, like, in the era where Ohio State has become quasi NFL adjacent, that you would go with a guy like Matt Patricia. But I mean, again, like his resume of late in the NFL had not been good. Well, this literally could not have gone any better. And that really matters heading into this season, because it's kind of easy in hindsight to put on rose-colored glasses because this defense was such an absolute monster and because it put so many players into the pros, and forget that heading into last season, they also had to replace a ton of talent, and they had to replace Jim Knowles, who had basically been the best defensive coordinator in football over the past 5 years. He literally had gotten better every single year for something like, it was close to a decade. And so Patricia, by no means was everyone just like writing this off. And he absolutely got it done in the face of big challenges. And now he's going to have to do that even more all over again. If last year's rebuild was big, this one is titanic. So first of all, kind of said, according to the NFL, 3 of college football's 5 best defensive players started for this team. They played at all 3 levels of the defense, in Downs, Arvell Reese, and Sonny Styles. And here's the easiest way to explain all the challenges Ohio State is facing this year. Well, quote unquote challenges. But this was last year's number 1 defense in the nation, and no one outside of Columbus can name a single returning player on this defense this year. As you might expect, Ohio State went into the portal to answer a bunch of those questions. And when Ohio State goes into the portal, Ohio State gets first pick. So it's a murderer's row. All ACC pick Earl Little Jr. from Florida State is coming in at safety. They have a monster former 5-star defensive tackle, James Smith, coming in from Alabama. They have Terry Moore, who was hurt all of last year at Duke, but the year before that was second-team All-ACC, also at safety. They have John Walker coming in from UCF, and this UCF, but he was a big-time recruit, freshman All-America. He turned down Ohio State coming out of high school to go to UCF, and they even got Christian Allegro from Wisconsin, who was kind of a piece of that UW defense getting a lot better against the run last year, even though they were dealing with that brutal schedule. We talked about that when we talked about Wisconsin. But it seems quintessentially Ohio State that the biggest name on this defense is going to be a true freshman. And that's linebacker Sincere Johnson, who is a 5-star mega recruit. He is an Ohio legend. He's the 2-time Ohio High School Defensive Player of the Year. Just a monster recruit. He's the headliner of a ridiculous recruiting class, which it's Ohio State. They always do this. But this one, yeah.
Headliner on defense. Not the number 1 recruit in this class, though.
I mean, it's Ohio State's really something, aren't they? They're doing their own thing, so I mean, it's like they have this ridiculous recruiting class coming in. So the question is, how many of those guys are going to see the field? And when do they see the field? But it's not like Ohio State doesn't have great guys coming back who were on this team last year. They have a bunch of them, including potential stars at every level of the defense. They have Kenyatta Jackson at defensive end. They have Peyton Pierce at linebacker. They have Jalen McClain at safety. Those guys are all really good. They were just overshadowed by the sheer amount. Again, this defense had 7 NFL players on it, just based on the guys who went into the draft this past year. So these guys were awesome. They were just overshadowed. I mean, this was heads and tails the best defense in the country. So ultimately, this is going to be a worse defense than last year's defense. That's basically guaranteed anyway. But it's not worse in like an I'd be worried if I was a Buckeyes fan way. It's worse in it's going to be fascinating to see how all these pieces come together, because they have all these massive portal guys coming in. They have a few guys who were kind of like the less heralded guys on last year's defense. And then they have these unreal guys coming in, Sincere Johnson being at the head of the group, true freshman. And it's going to be fascinating to see how this all coalesces and who's starting by the end of the year. But let's just put this to bed right now. We're playing this team in Columbus in mid-November, by which point any questions, it's all going to have been worked out. Like, this is all going to be sorted. Even if Sincere Johnson starts from day one as a true freshman, he's going to be a seasoned football player by the time they play us, okay? So the only weakness of this team, like I said, is like that these guys haven't all played together yet. But it also kind of doesn't help us. We'll talk schedule later. The Buckeyes play 4 of the conference's best offenses in a row before they play us. So they're going to be seasoned.
It's gonna be 5 of the conference's best offense.
There you go. Attaboy.
Chip Kelly.
Yeah, that's right.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Sure. But so they're going to be ready. Whatever. This one's going to be really, really, really tough. It is what it is. I mean, again, I'm not really worried about this. It's, they're Ohio State. Their problems relative to their situation is like, how much is this all gelled by the time they, can this be the awesome supporting player to their ridiculous offense, by the time they hit the CFP?
Offensively, I mean, they're good.
They got anyone on that offense, guys?
Indeed, they do.
This Jeremiah Smith guy, is he anything? I don't know. I haven't heard about him.
I'll be honest, guys. I'm going to spend about 80% of this preview talking about one dude.
Okay.
How do we actually feel about Julian Sand?
This is it's fascinating because I can't hate on him for what he did in like the CFP. But he certainly doesn't.
But what did he do?
Strike fear in the hearts of men.
What did he do in the CFP?
I know. I'm like there.
Can you remember a single play that Julian Sand made last year?
No.
That is
maybe like the interception.
That's like my whole thesis about Ohio State. So Sand is, and let me first get this is a freshman QB, a guy that was expected to come, super top recruit in the nation, yada 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 yada, and a redshirt freshman. He was with Ohio State the year before, but so I recognize like he's likely to improve this upcoming year, but like when you compare him to some of the other guys that we've talked about in our previews, when you think about Dante Moore, when you think about Jaden Maeva, when you think about Nico Iamaleava at UCLA, like there are playmakers at quarterback across this conference, and I don't know if Sand is one of them. So, but that being said, his raw numbers look amazing. He completed 77% of his passes last year, 32 touchdowns, 8 picks, 9 yards per attempt. That is a preposterous line for a freshman quarterback. But when the chips were down in the biggest games, like he still put up decent numbers, but he did not show up as a playmaker, and he could not influence those games. Against Texas to start the year, extremely conservative, probably by design. It was his first college game as a starter. Only 6 yards per attempt. Repeated that several weeks later against Illinois. Only 6 yards per attempt with the Ohio State battle station around him. After that Illinois game, which I think was the 6th week of the season last year, he went on an absolute epic 3-game run at Wisconsin versus Penn State and at Purdue. 83 of 98 passes completed for over 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns. That isn't.
But I mean, that was Wisconsin, Penn State, and Purdue.
But that's an 85% completion rate, over 10 yards per attempt, and 10% of his completions were for touchdowns. I mean, it's good. That's insane. Good. Like SEC quarterbacks don't get that against Sunbelt teams. And note, like the best of those games was against the best secondary of the 3, which was Penn State. He threw for 13 yards per attempt against Penn State. Completed.
All right, that's pretty sick.
It's crazy. And then down the stretch, the rest of the season, like his numbers remained good, but he was kind of ho-hum. He did pedestrian games against UCLA and Rutgers where he only threw for like 180 yards each. And granted, they didn't need him to do anything against Michigan, who had no answer on offense for this team. He did throw 3 touchdown passes, and he was decent. I think 200 yards overall. But again, they didn't. He hit that apex middle of the season, and then they didn't really use him again. He didn't need to do anything. And then when they did need him against IU and Miami, the completion rates were good, the air yards were good, but the moment that dude came under pressure, he threw 3 picks, he got sacked a ton of times, and Ohio State's offense sputtered. Now, when you look at this offense over the course of the Westlot Pirates era, that's 2011 till now, 15 seasons, they have been within one score of 40 points almost the entire time. There are only 6 years which they have been less than one score away from 40 points average per game. In 2011, that's the Luke Fickell season. In 2012, Urban Meyer's first year coaching the team. In 2015, that was the year after the national championship when JT Barrett was still injured. And the last 3 seasons. And with the exception of 2023, the Kyle McCord year, last year was the worst offensive scoring output for Ohio State since Luke Fickell was head coach.
They didn't have Chip Kelly.
That's right.
Chip Kelly. Now I'm not
sorry.
No, you're like,
but it is crazy because of the talent that was on that team.
Yes, exactly. And they didn't have a hard schedule. I mean, they could have. There's an element of playing with your food here. Like Michigan did this a couple of years. This is a little bit similar to my whole thesis around Cade McNamara and JJ McCarthy. If you go into a season with Cade McNamara as your game manager QB, and you approach the whole year like that, and you torpedo every team on your schedule because you're so much better than them, but the moment you get in a dogfight with Ohio State, who can match you man for man, and you need your quarterback to operate at an apex level, and you haven't used him, that's like you're putting yourself in a very dangerous situation. This is why Kirk Cignetti, another reason why Kirk Cignetti is so good. Like day one, he's like, I'm going to beat you 70-0 because I want to be ready. I want to be ready when I have to when my guy has to do it. Now, I'm not saying any of this fallout is Sayan's fault, but his passing yards per game last year and his yards gained per point, like efficiency wise, are virtually identical to Kyle McCord's offensive year at Ohio State. Now, McCord turned the ball over. He got sacked more. He had a worse completion percentage. So Sayan is a better quarterback for sure. But I still come back to the playmaking. He is not, he's surrounded by playmakers, but he is not the playmaker. Again, I said this at the top. This is a lot to put on a freshman. He's almost certainly going to get better this year. Typically, you see quarterbacks are elevating their accuracy. They're getting more comfortable throwing vertically downfield while maintaining or decreasing their interception rate. He's already pretty elite at all 3 of those things. And I mean, really the thing he should focus on is not getting sacked 5 times by Miami and 5 times by IU. But even then outside of those games, he was pretty good evading pressure. So what the heck happened here? I expressed some concern going into last season that Ohio State was returning to Brian Hartline as offensive coordinator after the national championship year with Chip Kelly. And it seems that may have been a little founded. The team blasted everybody they played until they hit resistance. And then they needed the QB to step up. He wasn't ready because he'd never had to step up throughout the course of the year. Now, this may very much just be growing pains, but it kind of harkens back to the pre-Chip Kelly era at Ohio State when the Buckeyes would destroy everyone and then fall apart at the end of the season versus Michigan. Now Hartline has departed to become a head coach, and they bring in the NFL's Arthur Smith to be offensive coordinator. Smith is a former O-lineman. He coached the Atlanta Falcons to 3 consecutive 7-10 finishes in the NFL. And then he spent 2 years running a kind of middle-of-the-road Pittsburgh Steelers offense. None of this is very exciting. But given how effective Chip Kelly was in 2024 at Ohio State, Smith's heavy run scheme and the way he packages and disguises it probably fits what Ohio State needs right now. It's like, I think this is a good match. But when I think, again, about like the broader spectrum of the Ryan Day experience at Ohio State, going back to Julian Sayin and Kyle McCord, the other thing that separates those 2 guys specifically from the other star QBs that the Buckeyes have had over the years is their mobility. Both Will Howard and C.J. Stroud would take advantage of defenses with their legs. And that is not Sayin's game. He rushed for more than 10 yards in only 2 games last year, and he had more than 15 in 0 games. He also had a negative overall rush yards in 6 games. Now, Howard is not what I would call a super mobile QB, but he was over double-digit rush yards more often than not and was never negative in that 2024 campaign. So, Arthur Smith has coached Ryan Tannehill, Matt Ryan, Aaron Rodgers, late career Aaron Rodgers, I should say. These are not what you would call like fleet of foot quarterbacks. So presumably he's got some ideas on how to make this work. But when you look at the spectrum of Ohio State offense, a dual threat QB has been a critical component of the playmaking effort and the effectiveness of those offenses. And it's the same thing I called out in the IU preview. When you get, again, this is not about the Northwestern game. This is about Ohio State in the playoff and in the game, against Texas to start the year, and when they face Oregon, and when they face USC, and when they face Indiana. It matters a lot if your quarterback is minus 10 on the rushing yard counter or plus 10 on the rushing yard counter, because in those games the margins are absolutely critical. And I just wonder if Sane can really improve enough on the passing front, because he's already so damn good, to take this offense to another level to actually do what they need to do this next year to make the Ohio State faithful happy. So, obviously, I focused a ton on the quarterback at the stage, and that's because the rest of this unit is just so absurd. The offensive line is typically loaded. The interior starters return. The right tackle is last year's starter in Minnesota. The left tackle is new but crazy talented. They aren't quite as deep as Oregon or USC, but they're still real good. Arthur Smith likes to use a lot of 12 personnel with two tight ends. So Nate Roberts is a tremendous true freshman who'll be out there a lot. And then you may see former Wildcat Hunter Welsing a bit.
Yep.
He could get some real playing time here. Yeah.
Shoot.
Bo Jackson returns at running back after his 1,000-yard year last year. The backups are gone, but they have a ton of guys in the room. Both transfers and recruited guys are going to be super strong running the ball. The wide receiver top line is insane. We've all talked about Jeremiah Smith. Brandon Inniss is the number 2 and would probably be like the top receiver on most other teams in college football. He's going to try to step into Carnell Tate's role as the number 2 on this team. But Whoa Nelly, I mentioned, John, when you were talking about the linebacker recruit.
Yeah.
I guess it's only one slot higher, but one slot higher in 247's composite ratings is Chris Henry. He's 6'5", 200 pounds. He's an insane player. He has a monster catch radius. He runs an Olympic speed 100-meter dash. The dude is the picture perfect receiver. He has had injury trouble in his past. He's the son of a former Cincinnati Bengal, actually, who passed away when Chris was young. Pac-Man Jones helped, kind of see him through high school, et cetera. He moved to California and to modern day, has set, receiving records everywhere he's been. If he plays from day one, he and Jeremiah Smith are the top wide receiver pair in the country by a large margin. I will stand by what I said in my Oregon preview. I think they have a deeper room and more experience, but these two guys are just like another level. And man, like if everybody's healthy when that game happens on November 7th, it's going to be the fireworky of all firework shows in college football. So, anyways, this offense is absolutely loaded for bear. If anybody goes down, they're perfectly fine, with maybe the exception of saying they have UCLA's backup from a year or two ago. They don't have a ton of talent behind Sane in the QB room, but he doesn't run much either. So maybe they're going to be fine on that front. But this is where, again, like, expectations matter for these teams. We're only one season removed from the Buckeyes winning it all, but the shine is already coming off that trophy in the eyes of many of their fans, and they will be satisfied with nothing less than a deep, deep run in the playoff. And I just don't know that Sane can get them to that level. And with the schedule, and I mean, I guess the defense is going to be great. There's almost no chance that they miss the playoff, but still, this team could ultimately, against the barometer that their fan base has, be a disappointment.
So the schedule, they open up the season at home against Ball State. They actually hit the road, which we rarely see Ohio State do in the non-con, but they're making a return trip to Texas, which I would imagine all eyes will be on, as the Texas faithful will want you to believe. They come home to play Kent State and Illinois. They travel to Iowa. They're home for Maryland, and then they're at Indiana the week before their bye. They then head out west to play USC. They come home to play Oregon on that November 7th, just juggernaut of a day. Is it a letdown spot against us the following week?
Hell yeah.
Let's go. We play them the week after they play Oregon. Then they're at Nebraska, and then they get Michigan in the Horseshoe to finish it up.
So guys, do you know what's common about the number one preseason rated team the last 5 years?
They never win the championship.
Nope.
Yeah.
In 21 and 22, it was Bama. In 23, it was Georgia. In 24, it was Georgia. And last year, it was the Texas Longhorns.
Credit to Ohio State. I mean, not that they necessarily have a lot to do with this other than the Texas game. If that Oregon game was in Outson, this schedule's horrific. It's not great anyway. I mean, at Indiana, at USC, and then home again. Now they have a bye in there, but
at Iowa on October 3rd is sneaky
yeah, that's not sneaky too. I mean, it's interesting too, just because their defense, again, this is last year's number one defense in the nation by a lot. They're going to be stacked with talent. They're also going to for sure be the worst unit on the field anytime the USC offense or the Oregon offense is on the field. Mm-hmm. That's just true. Those might be the two best offenses in the country other than Ohio State's offense. And I mean, it's a lot. I would bet anything. Well, this team could absolutely go 12-0. I'd bet anything they're making the playoff. They could make it with 10 wins. 10-2 against this schedule means you probably lost to someone awesome and very likely on the road. I don't think that's going to happen. But I mean, this is a hard schedule. They play a ton of really good teams. It is fascinating to everything Scuzz talked about that. I mean, on one hand, a ton of Ohio State people would be like, look, what this team needs is Ken Dorsey, and Ken Dorsey's what we got. And, we need a button pusher. We're so stacked. Just put the ball in the hands of the right guys and just let them go to work. And of course, wait till the ESPN hype engine starts telling you Julian Sayan's a top 3 Heisman guy.
Yeah.
Which is only that's going to be dialed in like the whole year.
Except it's ESPN, and they'll probably be just, SEC land.
Arch Manning, right.
Fox will be touting him as the number one.
Arch, and whoever wins the Alabama job, there's.
But it's funny because to Scuzz's point, right? I mean, Sayan's great, and this team is awesome, and that offense is unreal. But this is a world where USC has a guy who's a potential world beater, and Oregon's got a guy who's a potential world beater, right? And that you can even look at Washington, Damon Williams at Washington, and there are these different guys, it's like Trinidad Chambliss last year, where you're there are a couple guys that are capable of just going absolutely incendiary. Hell, Diego Pavia, right? That there are some guys that are just get the F on my back, here we go. And it's weird that it feels like the team that talent-wise is just lording over college football doesn't have one of those guys. No one would be man, watch out for the Julian Sayan Jeremiah Smith duo. That duo's unstoppable. It's like Jeremiah Smith and whoever gets him the football. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and it's not to say that Sayan couldn't step into that role this next year. But I don't know that I don't know how often a guy doesn't have that. Usually the playmaking ability jumps out early on, and then it's we got to limit the mistakes. We got to improve the efficiency. We got to improve the understanding of the defense, the processing, right? This is very different. He has all of that in spades. He's incredible. But if the playmaking gene isn't there, this is ironic for a number of reasons as a Minnesota Vikings fan, but in my head canon, JJ McCarthy was like Diego Pavia-esque in his confidence early on.
100%
Yeah.
he was. We've talked about this before, and it's like JJ McCarthy's like clearly fallen flat in the NFL. That guy was a sick college quarterback. And was exactly what they needed. I was actually wondering if you were going to bring that up earlier, because obviously it's like we're throwing Julian Sand under the bus if we're comparing him directly to Cade McNamara, but like, but the principle
that was more of an offensive coordinator. That was more of an offensive coordinator commentary, not a Sand commentary. But yeah,
but the principle is the same kind of thing where it's like, right, like, what if it's the CFP national semifinal and they're playing some ridiculous defense and they're down 7 and the team's like, we need you to go down and do this. Like, it has to be you, you know?
Who do you want with the ball with 2 minutes left on the clock? Your choices are Dante Moore, Julian Sand, Bryce Underwood, Josh Hoover, Jaden Maeva. I know who I want. It's more Maeva.
It's more Maeva. 100%. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's not close. That's the other thing. It's not close. And maybe Sand moves the needle and makes it close this year. Like, Arthur Smith is not a quarterback whisperer. This is a guy that is O-line and running game and tight ends.
He's
and
a smash mouth football. Like, he was very well fit in Pittsburgh, but like he's not.
Yeah, and with Matt Ryan, a super heady QB who was like a vet by the time Smith got there. So like, we'll see.
And that Texas-Ohio State game last year was just a gross-ass football game. Like, that game was just gross.
It was so ugly.
And I'd be fascinated to know. I mean, and that's the crazy thing for all of this and all like the quote-unquote strides, quote-unquote, that Arch Manning made, you know, in the second half of the season. My expectation is Sand still puts up the better numbers in that game just because, like, at the end of the day, like, everything on their battleship works. You know what I mean? Like, all the, you know... They're so, but I don't know. I mean, maybe one of them does separate themselves in that game. I mean, if Sand is lights out against the Texas defense, you know, in Jerry World, then he should be a Heisman candidate. But I don't know.
It's not in Jerry World, is it?
Oh no, is it not? Oh no, you're right. Oh no, that's right. Texas gets a true home game. I don't know why I thought that. Yeah. Well, other than money.
I mean, not that Jerry World wouldn't be. Actually, Texas stadium is bigger than Jerry World.
That's fascinating.
It seats more. Like, that's a 90+ thousand seat stadium, whereas, you know, Cowboy Stadium is.
I think it's more than 90+, my friend.
Yeah, so it'll be a true road game.
110 is 90+. I mean, just trying to book our, set the range. Obviously, the ceiling for this team is 12-0.
It's 15-0. I guess it can't go 16.
Yeah.
And when we talked about the Oregon,
they could, right? Couldn't they?
Well, if they're 12-0 or 13-0, like they win the Big Ten championship game, they would be getting a first. Do we still have first round buys? Yeah, they get a first round bye in the playoff. So they'd be top. They have 3 games: quarter, semi, and final. So 16. I mean, Indiana went 16 last year. Shit, you're right. Yeah, so 17-0 would not be possible, but 16-0 is the high water mark. They have certainly talented enough, and they've got an awesome coaching staff. They could go undefeated and win the national championship game. It is
100% they could.
I think the odds are against them for like his history would inform us, and they need their quarterback to jump up.
Yeah, and
what's the worst case scenario though?
10. I don't think they can lose more than 10. I mean, I guess I could be shocked, but this
more than
team
2. You mean?
I mean, more than 2. 10-2.
I mean, they could go to Texas and lose there. They could easily lose to Oregon.
Yeah,
in Indiana. I mean,
they could lose. There are 5 losable games on their schedule, in my opinion. I guess you have to include Michigan. So there's 6 losable games. Like there's no chance.
They won't lose them all, but
yeah. This is, I mean, again, and I said in the Oregon preview, I think they beat Oregon. I think the fact that they're hosting that game makes all the difference in the world, and that Oregon has to cross the country for it.
John, how do you rate those 2 defenses?
Oregon's is clearly better. No, and that's not against it's Oregon's. It's all last year's guys. Like Oregon, it's like that's one defense that Ohio State is not drowning in talent compared to Oregon. Those 2 teams have the same amount of talent, and Oregon's has all been playing together. That's the thing. Like Ohio State's they're bringing in tons of good guys, and not just guys that like, and again, like I think their defense is going to be awesome. I just think Oregon's better. All the pieces are in place and they have it all working. Ohio State has to kind of assemble a bunch of stuff.
I think the same thing about the offense. And then we already talked about the quarterback situation. Both teams have a new offensive coordinator. I guess, Oregon is also bringing in a new DC, but like, I don't know that I think Ohio State is going to win that game.
Yeah,
they'll
be favored, but
they'll be favored.
Much.
I mean, again, it's the home field matters everything. But again, like Dante Moore and his big old balls are going in there. And to all the points of everything that we talked about before, is like, you know what the Oregon has? A team that's sick at everything with Dante Moore at quarterback. Who Dante Moore could be a New York Jet right now, and he was like, "No, I would rather be an Oregon Duck." Going in,
very smart,
going into Ohio State. Yeah, and you know what? The same thing with Maeva. Ohio State will score every friggin' time they have the ball against the USC Trojans.
Yeah. But that game could come down to 2-point conversions.
That game could be the game of the year. Yeah, 100%, and which is awesome. Like, and again, I think that's why I think the floor. I mean, there are like losable games here, but I mean, this team is there at the end. I mean, they have the best. Jeremiah Smith's probably the best player in college football, and they have all this other stuff too. And they're going to be a player. I think Oregon's better, but I mean, you could easily talk me into these being the two best teams. And like you said, for all the talk about saying he could just take a leap and then just be better.
Yeah. I don't think Ohio State goes undefeated. I think they drop at least one of these games, and I think their floor is 9. I think they could lose. I think they could very, very believably lose to Texas, Oregon, and then one of Indiana and USC.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when you see them all lined up in a row, you're like, man, at Indiana, at USC, and home against Oregon, if you win all 3 of those games, hats off to you. If you lose one of them, I don't hold that against you.
Well, look, they beat a broken and brain dead Michigan team last year, and that team is run by a bunch of adults now, for the first time in maybe a long time, maybe since before Harbaugh got there, and Michigan has no business beating Ohio State. But that was true 2 years ago. That was true 4 years ago. That was true. 5 years ago. So you can't write that one off either.
Here's all you need to know about October 17th. Ryan Day, Kurt Signetti. Who do you think Buckeye fans would rather have as their head coach?
Oh my God, that's so true.
Yeah,
they would
100%.
They would cut Ryan Day out in a heartbeat.
I know. And I like for Ryan Day. Like the guy just can't win.
I know.
But yeah, no. I mean, but this team's awesome. But like you said, like that crazy stretch and then the massive letdown when Northwestern comes in and shocks the world.
Hey, the Chip Kelly factor.
Yeah,
let's do it.
Let's go.
Chip's got their number.
May Chip do for our running game what he did for Ohio State's running game.
Oh my God.
24.
Amen.
If you or a loved one is seriously injured by someone else's negligence, hire Kent Simpson of the Simpson Law Group. After over a decade prosecuting murder cases in Chicago, Simpson opened his own firm focused on wrongful death and personal injury cases. He specializes in car, truck, motorcycle, boat, and other transportation accidents, as well as construction accidents, medical negligence, slip and falls, product liability, and more. Millions recovered for clients. No fee unless he wins. The Simpson Law Group. Compassion, empathy, and vigorous advocacy. Go to simpsonlawgroup.com or call 312-332-2107 for a free consultation. And go Cats. So after our trip to Columbus, we come home only to turn right around and head up north to Minneapolis to take on the Gophers. November 21st. We're talking late November in Minnesota. We always seem to play Minnesota late, whether it's at home or on the road. And I can think of some of the worst weather games that we've sat through.
Mm-hmm.
all been against Minnesota.
Shirtless Mick McCall in 0 degree weather in Minneapolis.
Exactly.
Haunts my dream still. There was a chance I was going to go to this game, but turns out my kid has a hockey tournament the weekend prior in Pittsburgh, and that's just a little too much back-to-back travel for me to manage. But yeah, it does feel like Minnesota has taken a kind of permanent November date on our schedule.
So
I just want to say, like, I can't go to the Minnesota football game because I have a hockey tournament is like the most Minnesota coded thing that I've ever.
Be true to thy own self.
Yeah. Oh, so true. So true. This is a 8-5 team last year. We all remember
you were
some
there.
of us, I was there. The game at Wrigley, where we got our bowl eligibility. Hell of a fun game. What do we make of the Gopher D this year?
Yeah, it's funny to talk about this defense, Illinois defense. I mean, like, for all of our talk about Ohio State, for all the long discussion we had, that game means very little to Northwestern, and this game and the next game mean everything to us. Yeah, these final two previews are also kind of a fascinating conclusion, because you've all been listening all summer to all of these previews, and you've listened to me talk about all these defenses, and you're no doubt thinking, like, this whole thing's been extremes, because it seems like every defense I'm talking about is either unreal or they suck. And that's because kind of the middle of the conference defensively was the only three teams we haven't talked about yet: Minnesota, Illinois, and us. And in order, the three of those teams, Northwestern, the Gophers, and the Illini, were the numbers 10, 11, and 12 total defenses in our 18-team conference. And in scoring defense, we were 6. Minnesota was 10, Illinois was 12. So there's a gap there. But in points, the gap between those three teams was 3.8 points a game. So we're kind of talking about the middle here. And as you might expect, when we look at the Gophers, you see a team that was great in some areas and very much not great in other areas. So let's start where Minnesota massively overperformed, and that's the defensive line. So effectively, Minnesota's defensive line last year is exactly what Michigan's hoping theirs will be this year, which is everyone expected that they had a really strong anti-run unit, and then it gets turbocharged by a phenomenal NFL caliber pass rusher. But unlike John Henry Daly coming into Michigan this year, no one outside of Minneapolis saw Anthony Smith coming last year. And then this guy absolutely exploded. 12.5 sacks. He had a phenomenal 17.5 tackles for loss. This guy, like, the key thing to know about him if you haven't seen him, he's huge. He's 6'6", 285. He is what every NFL team wants their defensive ends to be. So suddenly, last year, Minnesota had one of the best defensive linemen in the conference, next to a bunch of guys everyone already knew were going to be really solid against the run, and that just unlocked everything for them. And suddenly, Minnesota was second in the entire Big Ten in sacks and tackles for loss. And behind this great defensive line, they had a really good group of linebackers. So the group was always probably going to fall off when Corey Heatherman, who's arguably the best preparer of linebackers this side of Tim McGarrigle in college football, moved on to Miami. But they were still great. And Maverick Baranowski led the way with 109 tackles. And this all matters a ton for the Gophers in 2026 because Smith and Baranowski are as quality a pair of returning pieces as any defense outside of, like, the elite tier in the conference is returning. But here's where we have to circle back to something. Minnesota was 10th in the Big Ten in pass defense. They were 10th in the Big Ten in pass defense with one of the best defensive lines in the conference and great linebackers. Here's the stat that sums that up. Minnesota was second in the conference in sacks and 15th in passes defended. And if you're jumping ahead of me and guessing what that means, you guessed right. This secondary absolutely sucked. And here's the thing about that.
They had Coy Parrish too.
They sure did. And me saying that they absolutely sucked flies in the face of a lot of other opinions that you'll see about this secondary. And that's because of a couple things. Number one, Parrish, who is legit awesome. But they also had John Nestor, who led the Big Ten in interceptions last year. It's all smoke and mirrors. This secondary was Coy Parrish and nobody. Here are Nestor's 6 interceptions last year, which are also his 6 career interceptions in 3 years of football. 2 versus Northwestern State, 2 versus Wisconsin, 1 versus Purdue, and 1 versus New Mexico in their bowl game. And guess what? Aside from those 6, the rest of the team had 3 total, and they broke up almost no passes. And remember, when we talked about Wisconsin, and there was this crazy whiplash between Wisconsin's sack numbers and Wisconsin's passes defended. But that was because Wisconsin was blitzing like lunatics last year because they had no guy with more than 2.5 sacks on the football team. Minnesota got 12.5 sacks from one guy last year. They got 29 sacks just from the defensive line. This secondary sucked.
Well, I think it's really important too, though. Those sacks were not evenly distributed across the season because, so they got 40 for the whole year, 39 for the whole year across 13 games. That'd be an average of 3 a game. But they had 7 against Rutgers,
right?
9 against Nebraska, and 7 against Michigan State. They only got 1 against us.
That Nebraska game was, well, we're going to get to us in a little bit too. And the key thing about all of that, relative to this whole defense, Minnesota appears to have brought no major pieces in the secondary. And you might have heard last week, they lost by far the best guy, not just in the secondary, but really in their back 7, Parrish. And he's at Oregon now. So looking ahead to 2026, what can I tell you? Well, I can for sure tell you, if you added Northwestern's secondary to Minnesota's defense, you'd have a top 3 defense in the Big Ten. But that's not a thing. This is going to be a defense no one can run on. They're sick up front. Their defensive line's awesome. And their linebackers are very good. And they're a team that can get after the quarterback, particularly outside of, like Scott said, the best offenses in the conference. They're going to terrorize those quarterbacks. But if those quarterbacks, and we're looking at you, Aiden Childs, can actually get passes off, well, let's just say that Griffin Wilde and Hayden Elegon, who had 18 catches for 238 yards against this secondary last year, are absolutely going to destroy this secondary for the second year in a row. That's the thing with them. You can't run on them. If you can get the ball in the air, you're going to have success. We torched those guys last year in the second level, and we can do it again.
You mentioned Aiden Childs. Aiden Childs was not the quarterback who got sacked 7 times when Minnesota played Michigan State last year, because Aiden Childs did not play in that game.
Right. He was out by that point.
He got sacked more than he should have last season, but not by this team.
Yeah. And again, their front 7, running against them is going to be super hard. They're legit. They're starting a guy who's going to be a first-round NFL draft pick at defensive end, and he could be a high first-round NFL draft pick. Again, he's 6'6", 285 with a great motor, and he's absolutely elite. And the other defensive linemen are elite too, and Baranowski's a really good college linebacker, and they're just set up there. And it's this whiplash. The secondary falls off a cliff, and that was last year with by far the best guy who they did not replace at all. If we can get the ball out, downfield, Chip's going to cook that secondary. It's just a question of getting it out there.
So, Scuzz, offensively, obviously they had a freshman quarterback last year. Drake Lindsey is back. I really want to hear you talk about their backup quarterback, only for the amusement of trying to pronounce his name.
Great, googly moogly. Shikanjansky. Max Shikanjansky? Interesting. I don't think, they better hope he doesn't play. I don't know.
Exactly right.
I'm more interested in talking about something else, honestly.
Yes, please.
Because the last 3 years, the fulcrum of Minnesota's offense has been Darius Taylor. When healthy, they can do some real damage. And when he's not healthy, they really struggle. Games where Taylor had 13 or more carries over the last 3 years. Minnesota was 15-4 with 3 bowl wins. And those 4 losses are 2023 against North Carolina, the overtime loss to us in 2023, and then losses in 2024 against Michigan by 3 and Penn State by 1. In games Taylor missed or had less than 13 carries over the same stretch. Minnesota's record is 6-13. That is a wild swing. They are so dependent on Darius Taylor. Last season, Taylor got dinged up. He carried the ball 140 times. That's pretty similar volume to his freshman year when he only played 5 games. But he's also lost a full yard per carry off of his average compared to that first season. The result, Minnesota averaged only 103 rush yards per game last season, less than 300 yards of total offense per game, and only 23 points. Some of that is certainly Taylor. Some of that's a young QB. Some of that is a lack of effective weapons and, frankly, just running out of some ideas and getting conservative on offense. When the Minnesota offense was thriving earlier in the PJ Fleck era, is because they were recruiting excellent wide receiver talent. They were spamming RPOs against a strong rushing foundation, and they were throwing downfield. It was the Kirk Shiraka offense. Now we're entering year 4 of the old tight end coach whose name happens to be Harbaugh, no relation, and they've really fallen short of those halcyon days. Drake Lindsay, that you mentioned, Sam, freshman QB last year, he was kind of pegged as a potential breakout player. I'm not sure why, but I feel like everybody was talking about Drake Lindsay going into last season, and I don't recall him redshirting, but maybe he did. And spent some time being mentored by Max Brosmer. Everybody loved his leadership, his attitude, all that sort of stuff. And frankly, he was not bad. He was 63% of his passes were completed, 18 touchdowns to 6 picks, but only 6 yards per attempt. And they just really didn't threaten anybody effectively through the air, in large part because they couldn't run the ball. They fell well short of Max Brosmer's numbers from the year prior. And it was probably the worst. It was the worst offense they've had in a number of years. They almost have to be better in 2026. It very simply because this running game was the lowest output in the PJ Fleck era. So they almost have to be better this next year. But they are still so dependent on Taylor being dynamic and healthy. They have a couple of freshman running backs who looked good in spring. Zeke Bates is a name to watch for. But Taylor is a special running back. His vision, the way he moves, his speed, he's the total package. It's going to take quite a jump for anyone to be an effective alternative to him. The offensive line looks very strong on the interior. They have 2 returning starters and an experienced senior filling the 3 interior roles. Left tackle Nathan Roy is already a big-time NFL prospect in his second year. Right tackle, they've got a transfer from Tennessee who should start. And if it's not him, they do have enough depth to plug the gap. But the tackle depth is pretty young across the board. This is not going to be like the 2022 and 2021 Minnesota offensive lines that were gargantuan and spectacular. But it should be a good line, probably better than last year if they can stay healthy. Receiver remains an issue, in my opinion. And this is where I think the Minnesota of the last 4 years has really fallen off. There's no Rashad Bateman here. There's no, they've had a couple of names. I think it was Javon Tracy. I forget the name of the guy that transferred in from Texas A&M, but he never really made waves. They just have not done well here. They do bring back some experience. So Javon Tracy and Jalen Smith were their second and third leading receivers last season. They're both okay, but neither are really head turners. They bring in a number of transfers, guy from Cincinnati, a guy from Texas bench. This doesn't look like a group that you would expect to rev up a young QB. The most exciting add might be true freshman tight end Roman Voss. If he can contribute right away, that would go a long way to building some stability for Lindsay. But again, they're going to be so dependent on the running game setting up the pass. Now, Lindsay's entering year 2. This is when quarterbacks almost always make a jump. He was not terrible last year. Even the sacks were down from the prior season, and he's a huge dude. He's hard to take down. But unless Harbaugh opens up this offense a little bit and they get comfortable attacking downfield, again, I don't see the weapons to really help them do that. I just don't see how the running game is going to get them back to great levels unless Taylor has an absolutely epic year, stays totally healthy, and is his excellent self that we've seen flashes of. They could certainly still win 7 to 8 games this year, especially given that defensive line and the strength they have in their front seven. Probably go to a bowl. I just think that the maroon and gold faithful have a little bit higher aspirations for PJ Fleck at this point. This is his 10th season,
which is wild.
Yeah,
it's wild to think about.
And so
I mean, Ryan Day's been there for 9. It's like what?
But this is, I mean, Minnesota famously fired Glenn Mason because they were tired of going 7 and I guess there were only 11 games in a season, 7-4,
6 and
5, 8 and 3 every season. They wanted to contend for championships. They wanted to be able to get over on Iowa and Wisconsin. And I like this team could maybe beat Iowa and Wisconsin, but I just like they're just not cooking with enough gas.
So their schedule shakes out a little bit like this. They open up the season at home against Eastern Illinois. Then they get Mississippi State and Akron before they hit the road, head out to Seattle to take on Washington. They're home for Michigan. They're at Purdue, and then they get their bye. Home for Iowa, at Indiana, home for UCLA, at Penn State, home for us, and then finish off the year at Wisconsin for the Axe. So
this season screams 6-6 to me. It screams 6-6. I mean, it could be 7-5, but I mean, I they're almost everything screams that they're 5-5 when they play us. They could be worse. It's that UCLA game. They could
and Mississippi
easily.
State.
Yeah, well, Mississippi State. I don't know what they're made of this year, but I think the most likely thing is they're 5-5 when they play us. If Nico goes off, it's entirely possible Minnesota loses 6 of the 7 football games right before they play us. It's just Washington, Michigan, Purdue, they win. Iowa, at Indiana, UCLA, at Penn State. They're not the better team in all of those games, except for UCLA. I mean, I'm not
UCLA,
counting Purdue.
Maybe.
And then, but I mean, like that's Nico versus Drake Lindsay. So I think when you look at the end of their season, us and Wisconsin, but I mean, the one, obviously, we're the one that we care about. To me, this one's all about attrition. You're going to hear me talk about this when we talk about the Northwestern defense, but like defensive line and interior defensive line, I mean, like defensive line as a whole is going to be a big issue for us. And we are not deep there. And we're going to see how our depth there holds up at the end of the season. But Minnesota is a classic case of a team where it's like they may not be able to throw. And that's super helpful to us. But they're going to try to hammer the ball. And like if Minnesota has a healthy offensive line and a healthy defensive and healthy Darius Taylor,
which is a huge asterisk.
Exactly. It's a huge question mark. And then it's like, what's the health of our interior defensive line by that point in the season? Because we don't look deep there. So it's like, depending on which way the wind blows on those two situations, that could go any number of ways. If they don't have Taylor, or if he's playing on a bum wheel, which has been so much the case his entire career, that's a massive asset for us. And that's something that's really going to help us. If he's just loaded for bear and he's absolutely dialed in, then, we might be in trouble. But again, like it's just funny because it's like we're so used to leaning on the defense, and like with our offense this year, I'm like, look, our wide receiver core torched this team last year, and we're hoping that the offense is going to be stepping up here. So,
do you guys remember how they scored last year? Because we outgained them 525 to 323.
Did
Parrish
didn't we kick to Parrish to start the second half?
Yeah, we did. We kicked to Parrish.
Well, that would explain it.
Yeah, that was one of them.
Like we kicked to Parrish a couple times, and they had just short fields.
Yeah. But again, like which to the point again, like they don't have him, and if they have a healthy Taylor and a great front seven, it's funny. I feel like we've said this about Minnesota before, like. A lot of times they can run the ball and they can play really good defense against the run. And in the Big Ten, that's a big thing.
We said this about them last year.
Yeah.
This exact thing, in fact.
But the wheels fell off last year, right? Like they couldn't run the ball.
Yep.
And that's the thing is if Taylor goes down again, like it's like they're not that good. And again, like for teams that can throw against them, which is like certain, not everybody, but I mean like Penn State's might be able to, Indiana might be able to, like Washington, like they may get thumped in Washington. And but again, like it really is possible that they could be way down the well when they play them, which would be sweet. Which would be, you know, very helpful for us because obviously this game's going to be really big for us.
If they're going to jump up and get someone, I kind of like them having a shot against Penn State. Penn State will be coming off of a game at Washington, and I just I think it's pretty easy to see Penn State in writing and think about Penn State and forget that it's actually Iowa State.
Yeah. Although, like, Iowa State loves to play a Minnesota team like this, too.
Oh, yeah. This is the maroon and gold
true.
versus maroon and gold in the mud. That's that is
exactly.
an in the mud game, which.
And like the same with Iowa. I mean, that Iowa game is going to be gross as hell, too, you know, but Iowa it just feels like Iowa's the team that wins that football game, you know? I mean, it's like that's the pedigree.
So ceiling 8?
Yeah.
Maybe?
I guess. I mean, again, like I guess so, but I really find myself hard. I mean, and because
eight's hard to come by.
I love Darius Taylor, and he's been in our football lives for a while, and we've played meaningful football against Darius Taylor, but that guy just is not healthy. And I find it hard to believe that, you know, when October rolls around, they're playing the Iowa defense, the Indiana defense, the Penn State defense, and the Wisconsin run defense, which is really good, and they're going to need him for all that. And if he's not good to go, I don't know how they get points in those games.
So
to me, 7 feels like the ceiling, unless Lindsey has like some sort of major step up, but he doesn't have the receivers, and they don't have the foundation to unlock the receivers. I mean, like if your defense is going to key on the run and man up against the receivers, and I don't think they can beat you that way. They have to get play action to be effective to draw defenders and create space. And I just don't think they're going to be able to do that very well.
Floor 5?
4.
Yeah.
4?
Yeah, 5. I would say 5 or 4. It could happen. If Taylor gets hurt right out, I mean, I hate saying something like this, you know, because it's like, I love that guy, but it could 100% happen. And then I have a hard time seeing how they get points. And if they play teams that, you know, if teams can throw the ball against them, like they're going to be in trouble.
All right. So let's turn the page. After Thanksgiving, we get to play an Illinois team that their biggest news coming out of this offseason, while we're building an $850 million palace of a stadium, they're putting up the biggest Jumbotron ever. Congratulations. You got a big old TV. Good job, guys.
Sure is big.
Are they calling Champaign the new Jerry World?
I mean, I saw pictures of it. It's fucking huge. But, like, why? Okay, cool. You got a giant-ass Jumbotron.
Hey, when you don't have enough fans to do a card trick, you got to do something.
So true. So, I mean, this was a 9-4 team last year. Obviously, they shot a little above of their weight class that we thought they would be last year. I mean, what do we make of Illinois' defense this season?
Well, one thing I wish we could go back and not play our Illinois game last year in the middle of Antarctica with Robbie Preckle as our running back. Can we go?
Yeah, that would have been nice.
Can we go back and do that?
Yeah, that would have been nice.
I mean, that was just classic Big Ten West ridiculousness. I mean, whatever. It's funny you talk about news for this program. There's a little news on this side of the ball too, and relative to news and the way that news is packaged, there are not many 2026 college football headlines being massaged more than Notre Dame poached Aaron Henry from Illinois. Sure they did. Follow the bouncing ball here. The guy who
we were excited about Aaron Henry though. I mean, we thought he was going to be pretty good.
Notre Dame should be excited about Aaron Henry too, but not as a defensive coordinator. Like, so follow me here. The guy who oversaw the Illinois defense falling through the floor when Ryan Walters left was retained last year and then basically stood pat on this defense in every way. And then the Illinois defense continued to be extremely mediocre. And then in the offseason, suddenly he's hired away to be massive air quotes, co-defensive coordinator, close massive air quotes, and defensive backs coach at Notre Dame. Let's keep it a buck here. He's Notre Dame's defensive backs coach. And that's exactly what he should be. Aaron Henry's a great defensive backs coach. He was a great defensive backs coach under Ryan Walters at Illinois. He's a position coach. We've learned that quite clearly over the past 2 years. The amusing thing was the expectation this past year that somehow an Illinois defense that didn't have any depth and almost no key pieces going into the season was just going to magically get better because of experience. So this wasn't an awful defense, but it was certainly a defense that was good at nothing. This was the 12th defense in the Big Ten in scoring defense, 12th in total defense, 9th in run defense, 14th in pass defense. And that number 14 pass defense is the way to explore this defense because we can compare them to the teams ranked directly in front of them at 13 and directly behind them at 15, Wisconsin and Rutgers. All three of those teams were bad against the pass. Rutgers, as we discussed, was also horrific against the run, but Wisconsin was quite good against the run. And Illinois comes in the middle. They were okay against the run because they had some decent guys. They had safety Matthew Bailey. They had linebacker Dylan Rosiak. But honestly, what Illinois really had at the start of the season was two truly elite players. And then one of them got hurt, and the other one spent the rest of the season trying to do everything by himself. And that's not an exaggeration. Gabe Jacas had 11 sacks for this team. The second best guy had 2. Gabe Jacas had 13 and a half tackles for loss for this team. The next closest guy was Tamawa Duragier with 4.5. And he, by the way, transferred out after the season. So Illinois had this future second round draft pick at defensive end out there who was basically trying to carry the whole defense on his shoulders. And let me just say, there's no return to classic form. For all of you who've been listening to this pod for a long time, there's no return to classic form I love more than the chance to once again say the sentence, wow, look at that one guy getting all those sacks for Illinois' shitty defense. It's tried and true. May we return to the Beckman era and be like, yeah, but they got that one guy with 15 sacks for the number 17 defense or whatever it was back then. So Illinois had one guy last year, effectively. And guess what? They're going to have one guy this year too. And that guy is coming off an injury. Xavier Scott is a legit awesome safety who was first team all Big Ten in 2024, who missed almost all of 2025 with injury, and who I would assume is the highest paid defensive back in football because he's all this defense has going for it. He has a brand new defensive coordinator this year, and his old defensive coordinator left to be the defensive backs coach at Notre Dame. So you better believe they must have backed up the friggin' Brinks truck to keep Xavier Scott in Champaign for this season. So between Scott and Matthew Bailey, Illinois is going to have really good safeties. And then it gets really dicey. There's a ton coming in through the portal this year. None of it is promising. Jacksonville State, Colorado State, etc. And yes, Illinois has a new defensive coordinator as well. It's a pretty wild hire because it's a 62-year-old guy who has literally never had this job title before. He's never been the defensive coordinator of a football team as his only role. Bobby Hauck was a college position coach from 1988 to 2002. And then he spent 16 of the next 24 seasons as Montana's head coach, another 5 as UNLV's head coach, and 3 as San Diego State's special teams coach. So with all that said, though, this is very much a defensive guy. He's been the losing head coach in the FCS championship game 3 times, and that includes as recently as 2023. So this is certainly an inspired swing by Bielema. There were certainly worse options than this guy, but honestly, this could all go really fantastically badly. This team was not in a good place defensively last year. And this is basically a gut overhaul of a defense that's kind of in a tailspin from where they were 2 years ago. And they're one repeat injury away to a guy who, again, was hurt all of last season from being totally bereft of elite guys. They're weakest in the front seven. And I absolutely believe our offense could have a massive advantage here. This is a big game for us. Our offense on paper looks way better than Illinois' defense does. And that, like, if Scott doesn't make it to the end of the season, that fact improves exponentially because Illinois they don't have guys right now. This is not a strong defense. They're kind of spinning their wheels. And the post Ryan Walters thing ain't worked out for them. They just turned over their DC. They're trying to kind of find something and get something going on this side of the ball. It's not really there. And hopefully we can use all that to end our 2026 season the right way.
Luke Altmaier's gone. I know Luke Altmaier is.
It's like our most spirited discussion of last 1 year ago.
Indeed, it was.
Yeah, I mean, he has definitely generated a lot of talk, at least between the three of us. But with him gone, I mean, what is Illinois' offense?
You might be surprised by my answer because I think the quarterback, at least, is in my mind, is going to be better this year. But I want to start back with last year because we thought this offense was going to be pretty good, even though John, you and I had a lot of different opinions on Altmaier himself. They had a tremendous amount of returning production. They had a formula that really worked. Bielema ball up front, freeing Altmaier to be great off of play action. We thought this would give them an opportunity to really take it to some of the conference contenders on their schedule and give them some difficulty. And in particular, we circled the fourth game of the year against Indiana as kind of a bellwether of which of those two teams was going to make an outside run at the conference title. And then Indiana completely torpedoed this offense. Now, granted, they destroyed most offenses last year, but holding a self-professed power running team to 2 yards rushing on 20 carries was definitely the high watermark for Indiana's defense. And with no running with no running game to unlock his arm, Luke Altmaier cratered as well, getting sacked 7 times and throwing for a season low of 159 yards. Surprisingly, this turned out to be a common formula for containing the Illini. I knew Altmaier, or I thought Altmaier was going to need to operate out of play action to be effective, but I didn't think their running attack could be shut down like that. They similarly struggled to run the ball against Duke. However, they recovered 4 fumbles in that game to roll to a victory. I mentioned IU already. Ohio State shut them down. Wisconsin, and we held them under 3.5 yards per carry, but we could only muster 14 points.
We did, and the Blizzard did too. I mean, let's not forget that.
Truth. All told, Illinois actually improved on their 2024 offensive numbers. They were more efficient in particular and well balanced, even though the rushing average came down a bit. But this is one of those, like, the numbers look better, but they were not a better offense last year, in my opinion. Now, I think we should anticipate a somewhat similar team in 2026, but there are some big changes. First and foremost, the offensive line is totally new. They lose 4 starters, including a couple to the NFL. They add Jake Renfro at center from Wisconsin, yet another answer to the trivia questions about Wisconsin's offensive line talent and where it has gone. They add Colorado State's starting left tackle to their excellent guard, Brandon Henderson. The other guards are JUCO transfers. They get a right tackle from Idaho. There are a lot of underclassmen in the depth chart. I'm not saying this can't work. Bielema has a great track record developing offensive linemen and offensive lines, but this is a far cry from the longtime tenured unit that was coming back last season. Now, that offensive line shockingly underperformed tremendously despite staying really healthy. So it's possible that in the grand scheme, this is not much of a drop-off from what they did last year, but it's not a great start or a great foundation for rebounding either. The running backs from last season are all back, but there's a big caveat. Khalil Valentine emerged as the top rusher last year out of a crowded room. Aiden Lafferty is back as well. though his sophomore campaign was not nearly as promising as his electric debut against us in 2024. And interestingly, 3-year running back Caden Fagan, who was kind of tabbed to be the starter going into last season, has moved to tight end. This dude was a pretty big recruit at running back, and now he's playing an undersized tight end role on a team that has turned over their entire offensive line. And by undersized, like, he's 250, 6'3". That's not big in tight end world. Fagan apparently asked for this change. He I think expects to see more of the field. He's got really good skills catching the ball, etc. But again, it's kind of not what you would call ideal. At wide receiver, they've set a pattern in the last couple of years. Pat Bryant and Hank Beatty over the last 2 seasons, essentially coming into the year like they were the number 2 guy and they just took over and put up great numbers. If that pattern holds, then top returner Colin Dixon will turn into the number 1 receiver and all will be well. But the difference is that Beatty did not exactly match Bryant's numbers. And you can go look at Pat Bryant in the NFL right now. He's effing phenomenal. I know you have, Sammy. I know you watch him a lot.
A lot. He looks great.
And more importantly, neither Colin Dixon nor Hudson Clement, their other returner, can come close to Bryant's 6'3" frame. In fact, there are no likely receivers with that kind of height unless they dip well deep into their freshmen on this team. And that is important because that is the frame of receiver that new quarterback Kenton Hauser is used to targeting from his last 2 seasons at East Carolina. It's not Eastern. East Carolina, the Pirates. Hauser was very meh at Michigan State in 2023. But he played well at ECU in 2024 and was simply outstanding last season. 66% completion, over 8 yards per attempt, 19 touchdowns passing, another 9 on the ground. ECU averaged 450 yards per game of offense last season and scored 33 points a game. That was an air raid scheme. Now Hauser comes back to the Big Ten to lead the Illini. First of all, he is much bigger than Altmaier, but with similar mobility and just as good, if not better, of an arm. How good and how his time in the MAC translates to better defenses with less physical receivers is a question. ECU was also a really good running team last year. They averaged 176 yards per game on the ground. So if Illinois has trouble reestablishing the run game, that could have a downstream impact to Hauser as well. This does not read to me like Curtis Rourke to Indiana did in 2024. I don't think Kenton Hauser is some magical missing piece that's going to unlock the picture of Illinois' offense. And that's in large part because they just don't seem to have a ton of sizzle around him. But my gut is that Hauser, from a playmaking standpoint, is a pretty significant step up from Altmaier. ECU averaged 273 yards through the air last year, and they only gave up 18 sacks on 440 passing attempts. Illinois gave up sacks at double that rate both the last 2 years with Altmaier at the helm. Said another way, I think Hauser has the ability to drive much more of this offense himself, whether the run game is working or not. And if the receivers and tight end convert Fegan can effectively step into the new roles, this offense could potentially be more potent than it was last year. Again, on paper, it looks like they've lost a lot at O-line, at receiver, at quarterback. But given how those components performed last season, the pieces as they come together with the upside at quarterback, I think they could be more potent and get up into the low 30s scoring. This could be a dangerous team on the offensive side of the ball. Sounds like they're going to need it based on that D.
I can't wait to get into this schedule and just go through. Just go ahead and take us through the schedule, Sammy.
Yeah, let's not wait any longer. They open up the season against UAB, Duke, and Southern Illinois, all at home. They hit the road to Ohio State, home for Purdue, at Michigan State, and then they get their bye. They're home for Oregon. They're at Maryland. They're home for Nebraska. They're at UCLA. They're home for Iowa. And then they finish up the year in Evanston.
I think the Illinois Fighting Illini are the runaway winner of the I have no effing idea what this team is going to be. They could be 10-2. They could be 3-9 against this schedule. I don't their defense yet is not good and does not return pieces. They do have Xavier Scott, but he could get hurt or he could not get hurt, and that's a huge thing for them. Um, and Scuzz was talking that's like they could improve, but they also lost a ton of guys. And all I see on this schedule is games they could either win or lose. They're going to beat UAB, they're going to beat Southern Illinois, they're going to beat Purdue, and they're obviously going to lose to Ohio State. They're going to lose to Oregon. The rest of them could all tip either way, right? Like, I mean, all of them. I mean, Michigan State, but that's on the road. And Duke,
So I totally hear you. At least on the offensive side and at the head coach position, this is a well coached team. Yes, they've lost their DC the last couple of years.
I mean, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but yeah.
They've been recruiting okay. Like, I don't think this is a bottom drops out year. I totally hear you on, like, a lot of these games are either or, but I think they will hold their own enough to stay at least in the 6 or 7 win range. I actually think the floor for this team is pretty low, in large part because of what Hauser brings.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I guess I kind of come down in the middle. I mean, I guess
they won't win 9. They won't go 9-4 like they did last year. They're not as good.
I mean, again, what if their offense works, their new DC is able to find something, and then I just come back to this ain't that hard of a schedule.
Well, remember last year they did play Indiana, USC, and Ohio State, so maybe last year was a pretty tough schedule. All right,
and it's if their offense on the flip side, it's like if Xavier Scott gets hurt, this defense could literally fall off a cliff. Not literally, but they could absolutely fall off a cliff, and in some situation where this offense doesn't gel, right? But I guess I come through it on splitting the difference. Yeah, I'm going to split the difference and give them benefit of the doubt. I think they win 7. It's really hard for me to see them winning more than that. I mean, again, I just see so many coin flip games in here.
Man,
I mean, it could break their way, but I'm like,
their trip to Michigan State the week before we go to Michigan State is going to be like appointment television. It's probably the same time as our homecoming game, but if not, that is going to be a great game to watch and understand, because they could go up there and barnstorm a really undermanned Michigan State team. They could also go up there and hit a wall.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like at Maryland, they got to play Malik in College Park, and and it's like I don't know, I look at Nebraska and them, and I'm like, I don't know, what's the difference between
I like Illinois.
Yeah, you like Illinois. You like Illinois' offense a lot, yeah. So
a lot more than Nebraska's. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, 7, 8. I mean, at 8, that
8 would be a high water mark. I think that'd be if they win 8 this year, they should be ecstatic.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And again, there is I'm not saying this just because I hate Illinois. Those two things are mutually exclusive of each other. I do hate Illinois. I would love to see them suck. But they're, you could find 9 losses. It's not like they're heads and tails above all of these teams. If something goes wrong for them, quarterback's a problem, their defense just implodes, which is absolutely a possibility, then this could go really south. I mean, again, they've got some bunnies on the schedule, but what they really have is this giant pile of mid. And, it could all click for them or it could all not click for them. But, hopefully by the end of the year, like I said, I legit expect our offense to be legit straight up better than this defense. I just love all of our pieces in every way. And then it's going to be on our defense to hold on against whatever this offense is doing by the end of the year.
So yeah, I mean, that's our schedule.
Man, it is. So I know, John, you mentioned it earlier, but it is that Oregon, Iowa, Ohio State segment in the middle of our schedule. Really, really kind of that underscores how important these last 2 games against Minnesota, Illinois are. And you already mentioned Robbie Preckle at running back, and just like how injured we were when we got to Illinois last year.
And like the blizzard too. I mean,
yeah, I just, it is, the fact that we don't have a bye week from September 12th on. It's maybe one of the biggest weaknesses of our team is what we might be looking at when we get to, from an injury perspective, from a health perspective, etc., when we get to like this absolutely critical final 2 games of the year.
Right. You make a great point, like in terms of the whole nation, anyone who's looking at our schedule and talking about how hard it is, of course, is circling all of those big time games. But you're right. Like every Northwestern fan's looking at this stretch at the end because we always know, like we always end up in this spot where these are huge games for us. And you're right. Like attrition and all that is going to be a really big thing for us. For me, and not step on, Northwestern previews right around the corner, but the whatever's going on the defensive line for us by this point in the season is going to be titanic. It's going to be paramount, and then how that matches up to what Minnesota and Illinois are bringing offensively by that point in the year is going to be huge. But yeah, these are the key ones.
Well, let's not step on our podcast next week, where we will be doing a deep dive into the Northwestern team for this year. Any last thoughts on any of these 3 teams, or frankly any one that we've talked about so far that obviously we started it off last month or two? Has anything changed from seeing some of like summer camp, or anything that's kind of you want to revise before we close the door on our previews?
Not really. I think, again, not without like massively stepping on like next week, but I think like it's the ability of it. Like there are so many good defenses in this conference, and yet if you look at all the ones that we play a handful of just unreal defenses, and then we also play a bunch of defenses that are not very good, and that list could be at least half of our schedule. And our offense is going to be carrying water. And that's a really weird thing for Northwestern fans to say, but that is going to be a massively important part of this season this coming year. And we'll get into all of that next week.
I just, as I'm thinking about, we've talked a little bit about it, broader conference storylines, that Oregon-Ohio State game being probably number 1 with a bullet on who's most likely to win the conference. I still love Washington in that kind of dark horse spot, even though they've, it's an uphill climb for them. They've got to somehow get Indiana and Oregon right there at the end of the season. All the preseason, rankings are starting to come out, preseason rankings, all this sort of stuff, and like people are talking about this, that, and the other thing. And I know it's all hype. Penn State feels massively overrated to me, and I think people are all massively under. They're taking Indiana and probably Michigan to a degree for granted. And then my 2 favorite things to follow this year are probably going to be the 2 things that have been super fun the last couple of years. Like Nebraska legit could win their first 5 games and lose everything else, and that's going to be amazing.
Hilarious.
Amazing to watch if we get another the drive for 6 as they try to close out the season, and then just the Wisconsin of it all. Like, are they going to finally break through, or are we going to see the culmination of that absolute catastrophe?
I was actually meant to mention that when we were talking about Minnesota, that it's like you look at Minnesota and be like, they're probably 5-5 or 5, or they're have 5 wins or thereabouts when they're heading into that Wisconsin game. But on the flip side, like it's going to be Wisconsin fans being like, Luke, we're going to need you to win this game. Like you're going to need to win this Minnesota game. Like we're not going to say must win, but you need to win this game.
Minnesota's won 4 of the last 5. When Minnesota beat them last year, they took over the series lead. They're 64, 63, and 8. They actually own Wisconsin. They've won 4 of the last 5. Man,
hadn't they lost a ton in a row? Like
they hadn't beat them forever, and so this is flex. I think 21 was the first time they beat them, or maybe it's Iowa that he didn't beat until 2023.
No, it was Wisconsin. Like they hadn't beaten Wisconsin in forever.
They hadn't beaten either one of them, and he finally got both done. So I can't wait, guys. College football, let's go, man.
Seriously,
I want it now.
So any final thoughts before we get out of here? I mean, we any last piece of news and notes that we should hit before we get out of here tonight?
Yeah, of course, we need to talk about the massive gift to the athletic department from Liz and Dick Uline. They, of course, are Mac Uline's grandparents. This is obviously it's a huge. I don't know if has it been earmarked. I mean, for NIL, but
it's $35 million over the next 3 years for quote holistic football success, including recruiting support and broader program needs.
Yeah. Obviously it's fantastic. I think, a lot of people, the Uline family, founders of Uline Trucking, obviously are family with a lot of resources. But one of the things that we really wanted to drum home, and this is not just like shining this on, obviously this is a huge and important gift for this football program. Like it's massively important. But I think a lot of people, particularly outside of the program, but maybe, casual Northwestern fans are just immediately going to take that jump from, oh, this is the Uline family and they have a lot of money and he played football for us and there you go. And it's just like to paint it with that brush is just to kind of ignore the culture and everything that's been going around on this football program. And I think maybe that's just because we're so close to it and we see a lot of these things. But like Mac Uline is someone where like his bonds within the football program are really, really tight. And this is also someone who's local. So he's had connections to this football team for a long time. But we just know that this football program in his time at Northwestern meant a huge deal to him. And that's something that applied to his entire family as well. We don't know him personally, but he had a fantastic experience, and not just a fantastic experience because he played well, but a fantastic experience where like a lot of really meaningful connections. The video that we put up that we've always talked about, but is one of those ones where it's like, this is the kind of thing we're talking about is, and it's funny, we just talked about Illinois, but that huge play in 2023 in that barn burner of a football game down in Champaign, when Braden Bruss forced the fumble on the kickoff, and it led to a Northwestern touchdown. And Uline is up in the corner of the frame on that play. And it's just like it's one of maybe arguably in a season that had so many highlights, one of my very favorite highlights because he's not involved in the play at all. And he's in the top left. And if you're not looking for it, you don't see it. But all he's thinking about the entire time is that Bruss did what he did. And Bruss did not recover the ball, and Bruss didn't score the touchdown. All Bruss did, well, not all, but Bruss forced the fumble. And Uline somehow the entire course of the play knows exactly where Bruss is and is basically just waiting to turn and celebrate with him the entire time. And once you see it, you can't unsee it because it's one of those things where you're just like, the bond between these two guys is obviously so strong that Mac's immediate priority above everything else is just like, I can't believe how great of a play my friend made in this game. And it's just like, those are the kind of things I think of when I see a gift like this by a family who's been this close to the football program. The money's amazing and it's super helpful, but it's like at the core of this are like people and the relationships they had and the impact that Northwestern, the place so many of you went to school, and the impact that it had on them and like the good vibes and the good feels. So, I love the gift. It's fantastic. And I love what it led to, what led to it.
As my buddy in Texas has said to me, as we've been talking about the $830 million Northwestern football stadium and the potential of NIL, et cetera, something, he said something to the effect of like, I look forward to the day where Northwestern, is topping the charts in terms of NIL and makes the college football playoff, et cetera. And obviously that's a bit of an extreme, pendulum swing from this, but this is the largest donation to Northwestern that is not, at least that I'm aware of, to Northwestern athletics. It's not tied to a building or a like capital fundraising project when they were trying to raise money for the indoor facility, et cetera. And I'm just going to be silly for a minute. Like if you kind of let yourself be swayed by the pendulum swing, we can look forward to a top 6 in college football down the road of Stanford, USC, Northwestern, Texas, UCLA, and Notre Dame.
The one other thing we wanted to mention, and this is a little bit of a pivot after talking football for however long this has been, closing on 2 hours, is field hockey. The Field Hockey World Cup is going on right now. So we had talked about this, but this is very much a Northwestern heavy event. So this is the big one. It's the World Cup, like kind of the two marquee field hockey events for women's field hockey. Are the Olympics every 4 years, and then staggered at a 2-year interval, the Field Hockey World Cup. So the Field Hockey World Cup is going on right now. It's being co-hosted by Belgium and the Netherlands. And we have 3 Wildcats there. Maddie Zimmer and Ashley Sessa, who are both Olympians, but then our great friend of the pod, Lauren Wattis, is also on this team as well. And they're all playing right now for a United States team that's doing pretty well so far. So the United States in pool play right now, the U.S. Have played 2 of their 3 group matches, and they're tied for first in the group. They have 1 game left against Germany. And then how this all works out in terms of the intricacies of how they move on from pool play to knockout play, I don't exactly get it. It's similar to the World Cup, though, on the Soccer World Cup. And I think the U.S. is positioned well right now. But again, like Zimmer and Sessa are both starting for this team, and Lauren Wattis is coming off the bench. Riley Heck for North Carolina, if you all watched, field hockey this past year, is also coming off of the bench. So it's the Northwestern, the Cats are playing a lot. None of them have scored yet. But I think the U.S. only has 4 goals through 2 matches. But so we're all playing, like the Cats are all playing. They're all making an impact, and for a team that is very much holding its own in this World Cup so far. So hopefully they get what they need against Germany, probably a win or a draw, and I would imagine they're through. And then we'll see how far they can go in knockout play. But it's pretty awesome so far. Like so far, so good for this team.
Definitely something we'll keep an eye on. Like I say, next week we'll be back to preview the Cats, top to bottom, inside and outside. And then we're into week 1.
Game week.
Yeah,
game week. I mean, it's here. It's time. Like we got our tickets in hand. We're ready to go. Trying to figure out like tailgate plans and everything like that. Just
we should officially announce, like, we're going to be at these games, but we have our official Noise Lot tailgate passes. So we're going to be tailgating in the Noise Lot for those first 2 games. The same place we've been for the past 2 years. We'll be there for the final 2 games on the lake. So come join us.
Yeah, right across the street from Tech. So we're definitely excited for that. It'll be good times. And a couple night games too. I mean, come on. It's like early September evening. Should be glorious evenings. So come on out, say hi, see us. We're excited. Let's talk some Northwestern football. Let's get out there. Let's experience the last couple games on the lake before we head about a mile west and enter the Palace. So with that, we'll go ahead and leave it there for tonight. Head to our website, westlotpirates.com, where you can leave comments and questions. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Blue Sky, at Westlot Pirates. You can always email us, westlotpirates@gmail.com. Tune in next time as we give our visceral and statistical views on Northwestern athletics, and look for us in the west side of Ryan Field playing the red pirate flag, because we give no quarter, especially the 4th. For John Lacombe and Eric Scousbo, I'm Sam Walter. Thanks so much for listening. We will see you next time.